Hello, everybody. I'm Michael George with the George Home Team at LPT Realty. Welcome back to another exciting adventure of real estate statistics in Volusia County, Florida. What I like to call the real estate of real estate, because the headlines want you to believe the market's falling apart, foreclosures are going through the roof, and I'll be honest with you, I just disagree totally from what I see. So rather than opinion, let's start getting into some facts and let's really take a look. This is going to be a deep dive, by the way. So pause me if you need to, go grab some coffee, espresso, and then come back and we can have some fun here. I want to give you this little disclaimer first. All this data is presented from the Florida Association of Realtors. It's as of the end of February 2026. This data looks at 2026 versus 2025 for the same time period. Unless otherwise stated, these are just for single-family detached homes. Now, the interest rate data we compile from Fred, the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. They've been tracking interest rates forever, so they're the best source for that. Right now, we got a little issue. Last month, our rates ticked up just a touch. We're at 6.11, but as you can see, we've come down substantially from the middle of last year. Around May, June, we almost touched 7%. We're at 6.9. So we've come down quite a bit, but we did bump up this last month. Interest rates are probably, this is about where they're going to be. If you're waiting for interest rates to fall dramatically, I really think you're going to grow old waiting. Historically, rates have been around 7%, other than that freak, COVID period. So we've got some tips how either if you're moving up into another home, how you can use some of your equity to buy down the interest rate on your next home. Or if you're a first-time buyer, we've got some financing tips and some great lenders that we can get you in touch with. We can help you get into that next home and help you then build equity. And when rates do come down, if they do, when they do, you'll be able to refinance at that time. But when they do come down, those prices might be a little higher, which is why you may want to think about getting in there now. Now, before we get into the stats, I want to talk about the difference between median and average sales price, because we have small data sets for the most part when we look at even county, but much more city data. There's just not a lot of data points. So median is going to give you a better idea of real selling price than average. And here's why. Let's assume we had 5 homes that sold. One for 200,000, one for 220, one for 230, one for 240,000, and then one for $2 million. Your median is the home that sold in the middle. There's 2 that sold more than that, 2 that sold less than that. So it's the one perfectly in the middle of that set of numbers. Now your average comes out to 578, which it's correct. It's an average, but in this case, it's really not as good of an indicator of the market health, because you've got that outlier sitting there. And that can definitely come into play in coastal communities, such where we live, etc. So that's why I tend to look at median more closely. That to me gives a better set of data points. So let's get rolling here. Looking at all of Volusia County as a whole, let me get my face out of the way there. Let's get down a little bit. All right. So we had almost 600 sales last month versus a little over 600 last year. And so that's about the same. So we got a healthy market here. The percentage of cash sales, 30% of all those homes sold for 100% cash, no mortgage. It's about the same number last year. Now here's where we go. The median sales price is $349,945 versus $345,050 a year ago. So that is actually up 1.4%. And that is why it is frustrating to me as a real estate professional when I see these headlines and people want to scream about house prices are falling, they're tumbling. No, year over year, they've increased 1.4%. If you look at median, 7%, 7.7 on average. So that's a healthy market we've got here. It's strong. It's not going nuts. It's stable. And that's what they're getting, right around 95% of their ask price, of their original ask price, by the way. So sellers, the key is to price your home right the first time. You don't want to do price reductions. You want to get a price right the first time. This isn't the market to reach for the sky, but if you're realistic, you're going to get sold quickly. Median days to sale listing to the time it sells and changes ownership is around 101 days versus 86 a year ago. It's up 17%. Active listings 2946 versus 3331 a year ago. So our number of listings in Volusia County is down almost 12%. Now, your month supply of inventory, I'll explain that very quickly. What that is if no other houses came on the market right now, with the current pace of sales, it would take 4.3 months for all of those houses to get sold. A year ago, it was at 5 months. So we're right around the same, but it says down 14%. So now let's dive into a couple of different cities in Port Orange. If I didn't include yours, it may be because the data set was so small that it really didn't make sense to graph this out. I am more than happy to get any data set you'd like. I'll be happy to email it to you, send it to you privately, whether it's for your city or your neighborhood. Just reach out to us and we'll get that going for you. So now as we look in Ormond Beach, let's start at the top of the county. We had 37 sales last month versus 31 a year ago. It's up around 20%. 1 out of every 2 homes in Ormond Beach sold for cash last month. Never going to be a foreclosure crisis if you own your house free and clear, is there? February last year, we had 41%. Median sales price 409 versus 400 a year ago, up slightly. Average, again, up slightly. Sell price to list price ratio about the same year over year. It's taking about 3 months for a home to sell in Ormond Beach. There were 203 active listings as of the date of this recording, which, by the way, is March 16th, 2026. 228 last year, so that's down 11%. And then month supply of inventory, 4.4 versus 5.1, so that's down 13%. There you go, Ormond Beach. Daytona Beach had 71 sales last month versus 80 a year ago. That's down 11.3%. 1 out of every 3 homes in Daytona Beach sold all cash versus 27.5 a year ago. The median sales price, $355 versus $351 a year ago, up slightly. Average $366 versus $367. Sounds the same to me, pretty much. So I don't see a crash there. Sell price to list price ratio, 95% versus 93% a year ago. It's taking, again, about 3 months to sell a home in Daytona Beach from the time you list it to the time you close. Your active listings are 437 versus 474 a year ago, so that's down almost 8%. Month supply of inventory, 5.6 versus 6.7, down 16%. Nice balanced market there. Port Orange, you had 53 homes sold last month versus 51 a year ago. Your cash sales, about 1 out of every 4 were all cash in Port Orange, about the same as a year ago, in my opinion. Median sales price, $350 versus $345. Again, slight uptick. Average sales price, $373 versus $398. Sell price to list price ratio, 94.2 versus 94.8. Looks about the same to me, relatively speaking. Median days to sale, 123, so that's taken you 4 months now to sell a home in Port Orange versus around 2.5 a year ago. Active listings, there were 231 on the market as of the date of this recording versus 260 a year ago. That's down 11.2%. Month supply of inventory, only less than 4 months of inventory in Port Orange versus about 5 months last year. Now we separate New Smyrna Beach into the mainland and the island. They're different markets. So looking in 32168 mainland zip code, you had 60 sales versus 45 a year ago. That's a 33% increase. 40% of all those homes in New Smyrna Beach sold all cash versus 26.7 a year ago. Your median sales price is up a healthy 11.2% at 401, 495. Your average sales price came up 37.5%. You're at 583, 666. Sell price to list price ratio, 93.3 versus 94.2. Median time to sale, 110 versus 115, about 4 months to sell a home in New Smyrna Beach. Active listings, 287 versus 284, about the same as last year. Month supply of inventory, 5.4 to 5.1. Again, according to the statistics I see in front of me, that looks like a pretty healthy market. Now, on the island, here's the disclaimer. That is extremely small, 12. When you got 12 sales, there's an 8 last year. It's really a incredibly small data set. I do it because I live in New Smyrna Beach, so I'm going to give this stat, but there are some other cities that had similar stats to this. I just don't see them as relevant with such a small data set. But let's look at this. 58% of those 12 homes were sold all cash. 921,000 versus 709 a year ago, up almost 30% in median sales price, and up around 15% in average sales price, $1.3 million. Sell price to list price ratio, 89.9 versus 84.10. So sellers are getting a little closer to the list price this year than last year. Median days to sale took an incredible tumble, 96 days, a little over 3 months versus 223 a year ago. You have only 28 active listings on the island versus 30 a year ago. Month supply of inventory are 20 versus 17 a year ago. That's a big month supply of inventory. Let's go into Edgewater. Edgewater, you had 27 homes that sold last month versus 24 a year ago for a 12.5% increase. 1 out of every 3 homes in Edgewater sold last month for all cash. The median sales price was at $308,000 versus $287 a year ago. That is up 7.3%. Average sales price $384 versus $312. That's up 23%. Sell price to list price ratio 95.6 versus 94.3. We're about the same. Median days to sale 114, so about 4 months versus about 3 months a year ago. And then active listings is 143 versus 163. So we are seeing shrinkage in inventory across the board pretty much in the county. Month supply of inventory 4 versus 5 a year ago. Again, a healthy market to me. Going out to DeLand, you had 49 homes that sold last month versus 58 in last year, and that's down 15.5%. Only 14% of those homes were cash in DeLand versus 25% a year ago. Your median sales price did dip 1.3% for those headline stalkers, 367.5 versus 372.495, but yet your average increased 395 versus 376. So your sell price to list price ratio, very healthy, 96% versus 97.2 a year ago. Median days to sale, 102 versus 94, 3.5 months. I don't think any seller is going to be unhappy if it takes them 3.5 months to sell their home. Active listings, 209 versus 224. And month supply of inventory, 3.7 versus 3.9. I think that's a spectacular market there. Deltona. You had 86 homes that sold last month versus 94 a year ago. That's down 8.5%. Cash sales 17% versus 12% a year ago. Not as many cash sales out as in DeLand and Deltona as we see on the east side of the county. Your median sales price dropped slightly, $298 versus $300. So again, there's a headline. Prices dropping in Deltona. Average sales price $295 versus $309. Your list price to sell price ratio, nice, healthy 95.9 versus 96.8 last year. So again, sellers are pretty much getting what they're asking for. It's taking them 87 days to sell in Deltona versus 80 a year ago. 312 active listings versus 446 a year ago. So that's a big drop in inventory, 30%. 3 month supply of inventory versus 4 a year ago. So I think next we're going to look at condos for 2 slides. So up until now, all these slides have only been single-family detached homes. We're now going to look at 2 markets for condos and townhomes. They're combined together by the Florida Association of Realtors, one category. If I did include your city, it's probably because there's not enough data points to really give it a global look for purposes of this broadcast, but I'm more than happy to get it to you. Just reach out to me. Boom, we'll get it right to you. In Daytona Beach, 32118 zip code, you had exactly the same number of sales as a year ago, 41. Look at that percentage of cash sales. Almost 3 out of every 4 homes are selling, or condos are selling for all cash. Last year, 8 out of 10 sold for all cash. Median sales price, an incredible increase year over year, $365 versus $199.9. And you may recall a year ago, there was a lot of scare around condo recertification. We've worked through that. You're seeing now prices just roar right back. Average sales price $395, call it, versus $350. Incredible rebound in that market. Sell price to list price ratio, 87.1 versus 87.5. It's taking the average condo or the median condo to sell about 4.5 months now, and it was less than 3 months a year ago. So it's taking longer to sell. There's 591 active listings versus 787 a year ago. So again, that market is shrinking, down 24.9%, which is a good sign, in my opinion. Month supply of inventory, 13.6 versus 17.3. And that's why it's a good sign that inventory is shrinking as your month supply of inventory shrink. You want to see that somewhere between 4 to 6, 3 to 8. That's kind of a balanced market. More than 4 to 6 is a balanced market in any of these statistics. When you get numbers like this, it's obviously a buyer's market for condos right now. But I would be cautious, buyers, because when your inventory is shrinking, this is going to ratify itself soon. Now let's look at the island of New Smyrna Beach, 32169 zip code. This we had 34 sales versus 23 last year, so that's up almost 50%. And again, more than half of those are going all cash. And last year, 7 out of 10 went all cash. Median sales price, $432,500 versus $482,000 last year, so that's down 10%. Average sales price, likewise, down 17%. Not crashing. It's a sell price to list price ratio. They're still getting in the lower 90s of what they're asking. Median days to sale, 124 versus 87, so it is taking longer for that new Smyrna Beach condo or townhome to sell than it did a year ago. Active listings, though, are shrinking, as we see in all the other markets, 254 versus 304, and the month supply of inventory, 9.6 versus 11.4, again, tells me the market's coming slowly back into balance on the condo side, on the beach side of New Smyrna Beach. I hope you found these stats helpful this month. I'm a former accountant, hospital CFO, so numbers is my thing. And while the slides may be very boring, I do hope you found the data helpful. If there's anything I can do for you, please reach out. I'll be happy to get you the information on your neighborhood, on your city, what have you. My name's Michael George, along with my beautiful wife, Cindy here. We are the George Home team at LPT Realty. I do appreciate you watching us, and we'll be back again next month with this market update.